Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. This week we're joined by Canadian landscape photographer Cath Simard. Cath's had great success in the NFT market. She's well known across the internet. She's a Sony Ambassador and she's been travelling the world now for quite some time, creating majestic photographs in the process. Guys, if you're enjoying the podcast, please do hit a like, subscribe and share it. Also ring the bell if you're watching via YouTube. Let's get into it. We've got a great hour of photography conversation and Cath, she's got a lot to say and I know you're going to enjoy it. Enjoy this week's episode of the Phoblographer's Inside the Photographer's Mind. Hello, Cath.
Hello.
How are we?
I am doing great. I'm just waking up in the mountains and the weather is beautiful and I'm just really itching to go hiking today.
So you're in Canada, right?
Yeah, I'm in Canada. I'm based in Canmore. That's in the Canadian Rockies in Alberta.
Nice. But tell me about that accent. That's I'm not familiar with the accent. Where's the accent? Wait, what's your background?
Okay, so I'm from Quebec, so French Canadian, and I moved to the Canadian Rockies back in December. So the year before, I actually spent about 6 months living off of my car in the Canadian Rockies because I love the place so much. Wow. And I've been there just so many times, and I remember since the day that I came to Canmore back in 2016, I just really fell in love with the place. And I've always told myself that I would live there someday. So I did the big move last December. And here I am today living in the Canadian Rockies and I love it.
That's amazing. So you were living in your car. Did I understand that right?
Yeah, I was living in my RAV4, but that's something I love to do, actually. I had the choice between buying a new lens or living in my car. And well, so I decided to live in my car and buy a new lens.
Both.
You know, it's like rent or camera gear. Yeah. I pick camera gear every single time. Yeah. But also when I travel in general, like I just think of, you know, my trips in Scotland, Iceland, Patagonia. I always rent cars and I sleep in the vehicle because, you know, you save some money and then you can sleep closer to the places that you photograph. And yeah. For me, it's not that much of a hassle, and I can sleep comfortably. So
that's amazing. I was looking at your portfolio. I've seen it before, but I always like to kind of have a refresh just before I speak to someone. Beautiful work, by the way. I mean, seriously, it is absolutely beautiful. And I saw that you went to Scotland, and yes. you may not be able to tell, but I'm from England, and my first thought was, where's the portfolio from England? Did you not make it down to the beautiful nation that is the English country?
No, I did not. So when I was in Scotland, I was actually on a trip with the Sony crew. Nice. I think that was back in 2019, if I remember correctly. And it was just like a 1 week trip. And then I decided to stay there and extend my trip. Then I rented a car and then I, slept in the car for 3 or 4 days, drove back to the Isle of Skye, and then I hiked and, just took some photos there. And then I had to fly back home. So unfortunately, no.
To be fair, if I'm being completely honest, Scotland is such a beautiful part of the world. I think,
Yes.
England's got some nice nature and some nice hikes. We've got the Lake Districts. But Scotland is, especially for what you're interested in, kind of, in terms of hobbies and photography, it's the perfect place to be. So I don't judge you for that.
Okay, I appreciate it.
So what's going on with you at the moment, photography wise? Is there kind of a focus that you've got at the moment?
Yeah, so basically, let's say before COVID, most of my income was coming from running workshops all over the world. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, I had to stop that. So along the way, I was sort of like trying to find different ways to support myself. And I released a course online. I was really trying to push to license my images, sell prints and stuff like that. But currently, I would say that my main focus is NFTs, and I've been doing NFTs for the last 8 to 9 months, and it's really been incredible for me. So I'm really trying to keep pushing in that direction.
NFTs are a very polarizing topic at the moment, because I think there's like we'll just call them the old school brigade. That's like, no, this is not right. We should be printing images and selling prints. And then you've got the new school that's like, no, this is just a different avenue and a new way of doing things. Kind of, how do you feel about NFTs? Put the kind of the business aspect of it and it being a stream of revenue to one side, in terms of like digital art versus printed art. What's kind of your opinion? Which is better for you?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I have made more with NFTs within the last 9 months than in my entire career as a photographer. So for sure, for me, it makes sense. But I can understand that for somebody that has a very strong business with prints, with even, I don't know, like image licensing or anything else outside of NFTs, I don't think it's necessary to jump on the boat, but I do think that NFTs are the future. Mm-hmm. And for being in this 24/7, literally, I wake up, I just go on Twitter, start interacting, just keep myself updated. What's up today? And I've been doing that for the last 8 to 9 months. There's really a revolution that is happening right now in the art world. And you can see that even like art sales in general, mm-hmm. are extremely high when it comes to NFTs compared to the traditional world. So it's very interesting.
I'm kind of clued up on NFTs, but just for those that aren't, and maybe listening to this and maybe thinking, what the hell is an NFT? So if I came to you and I was like, hey, Cath, I want to buy your NFT, are you just sending me a JPEG file of your image and I'm the only one who has it? What am I actually getting?
Yeah. So basically an NFT is a non-fungible token. And I like to explain it as a digital signature, as a proof of authenticity. So there are different websites where you can, let's say, upload your image as a JPEG, whatever, PNG. And then basically it is registering on the blockchain. The blockchain is just a giant universal ledger that compiles and remembers all the transactions. Mm-hmm. So basically, NFTs is a way to authenticate your work, and the consensus within the NFT space and the community, and even a little bit outside now, is that what is registered on the blockchain is what is considered the original and the authentic, and that is where the value is held.
Got you.
And so basically, you might have that photo printed 1,000 of times, licensed everywhere, but the true value is the NFT, is the person that holds the NFT. So either yourself or either the person who buys your NFT. So I know at first it can be confusing because sometimes people are like, well, when you sell the NFT, are you transferring rights? Mm-hmm. Like, how does that work? Mm-hmm. But, inherently, when you make an NFT out of your image, it is not transferring rights unless you specify it, either in the smart contract or in the description. So, you can sell the NFT and then you can keep selling prints as much as you can. And, that's the way it goes. So it's definitely a very fascinating environment, and that's why I've been stuck there for 9 months and just can't get enough of it.
Would you say in a small kind of way you're kind of addicted to this process, like the whole world, because it seems pretty endless in terms of the amount of information that you can absorb about this? It's very open. Like, is it constantly on your mind?
It is constantly on my mind. But I have to say that the number one thing that NFTs have done for me was to push my art, 100%. And I think that that's why it's so addictive, because, when you think of the old days when you would just post a photo on Instagram, people scroll, they view it for 2 seconds, don't even read the caption. Mm-hmm. But with NFTs, what is valued is actually the story behind your image. It's your creative process, is what are you trying to achieve with your art. So it goes from like a 2-second attention span to like people that are genuinely interested in learning about your process and your story. And also I would say that innovation is rewarded in NFTs. It's not just like, hey, you create a collection, you post something. Usually people will expect a little bit more than that. There's also a lot of people, including myself, who spend a lot of time on Twitter Spaces, talking about, you know, my art, my process, my story. And that really helps creating stronger connections.
Amazing.
Because, you know, like if we go back into Instagram, like how were we creating connections? Maybe by DMs, maybe by commenting on each other's photos, maybe dropping a like. It's very surface level, but I feel that with NFTs, because it's very sort of like one-on-one and everybody supports everybody, you create really strong connections. And I think that that's one of the reasons why the community is so strong, because it's real and it's authentic and people actually care. So that's what I love about it.
That's amazing. And you mentioned Twitter. I actually just joined Twitter. I was on Instagram. I still have my Instagram, but, you know, I joined Twitter, and my first impressions is that the photography community is so much more healthy compared to Instagram, compared to Facebook. It's more, I don't know, it's more supportive, it's more detailed, you know, it's more authentic. Is that the experience you've had when you compare it to like Instagram and Facebook, that Twitter, it just gives you more of that community vibe?
100%. And, you know, I started on Twitter back in February with 0 followers. And I feel that, you know, it's if you put a little bit of time and energy, it's really easy to build a strong community, in the sense that like the more you support others, the more people will support you. And it's really sort of like a sharing, supporting movement rather than, let's say, Instagram. It is just like almost competition. Who posts the best photo, who gets the most likes. Like people don't really care about, you know, the likes and the comments and this. It's just about like, who do you connect with and how interested are people in your art. And I think that's why it's so cool.
So to anyone listening, so you've not been on Twitter that long, really. February, it's, you know, it's what, 6 months, something like that.
Yeah, 6, 7.
So someone listening to this may be thinking, okay, you know, if I set up a Twitter account today, how much time do I have to put in to build it? Like, can you quantify kind of maybe each day how much you're interacting and using Twitter to help build?
Yeah. So I think that perhaps if I just look at myself, I'm definitely on the extreme of the spectrum where, you know, I don't have kids. I don't have a second job. Like all I had to do was to sit down and just be on Twitter and be on Clubhouse as well, which was basically before Twitter, Clubhouse was really good as well. Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that when I started, I was spending a good 4 to 6 hours a day, minimum, every day. But I do feel that, you know, for somebody, let's say, who would like to just start slowly and do that more as a side hustle, maybe an hour per day. And that hour can be spent just listening to spaces on Twitter, learning about NFTs, or even jumping on stage and just sharing, you know, about a little bit more about yourself, or resharing art that you like, or tweeting about an artist that you have discovered. It can be a bunch of things. Like you don't just have to, you know, share, just do something that feels authentic to you, and then you will build community.
Smashing. In terms, because the kind of photography you do, obviously it's nature, it's up in the mountains, it's in these luxurious, beautiful natural scenes. It's not, so I do street photography and I can just walk outside my door and just take pictures every single day. Like no problem. I can just walk to the shop, take my camera. But with what you do, there's a lot of effort into it. So how often do you go out and make photographs, and what's that process like?
Yeah. So I would say that I make maybe between 8 to 10 images per year. And when I say make, it's more like publish. I share. Yeah. Because I work on a bunch of other photographs that I will never share. And the thing is that with my type of photography, I do mostly composite photography. So when I started, I was doing a little bit more like classical landscape photography, single shots. But very quickly, I got attracted by digital art and composites. So usually my process will look like I will go on the spot a first time during the day to scout the location, find different compositions that I like. And then after that, I will come back a second time. And usually that involves a lot of hiking. So it's like, hike in and out just for the scouting, maybe 20K, and then come back another time in and out 20K. And then that's going to be to photograph, and fingers crossed that the weather and everything aligns. So I will usually, let's say, take my foreground at blue hour, and then either, stay after sunset to capture the night sky. And then I will come back home, and then I will start putting together all the pieces of the composite. So that's how I've been really enjoying doing photography within, let's say, the last 2 to 3 years, just like going to places, capturing different elements, and creating a new environment that is either close to reality or either halfway between reality and my imagination. And that's really how I like to make my art. So for sure, my style of photography is more directed on quality over quantity. Yeah, quality. And it's just like, I think the last time now I've put a photo out was 2.5 months ago.
Wow.
And it's like, well, if I don't feel like going into my library and working on one of the expedition that I did like 6 or a year ago, I just don't do it. And there's also a part of my process that involves simmering. So I like to basically go on an adventure, come back home, and don't even look at the files. I just like to leave the files in the hard drive because I like to disconnect from the experience. So I know some people, sometimes they come back, they're like so excited to edit their photos straight away because they want, like, it's fresh. But for me, I want to do the opposite. So I want to completely disconnect with the experience. So when I start working on the either single shot or composite again, then my goal is to bring back some of these feelings that I felt. And also, I think that because my intentions are not always to stay true to reality, that allows me to incorporate a bit more of my imagination within my process. So that's how I like to do that. Takes a lot of time, that's for sure.
And I think that's to anyone listening, I think that's a great example, because we do live in a time now where everything is immediate. People are posting on socials 3-4 times a day. They're going out, they're shooting, they're editing, they're posting. It's this constant cycle. I think there's skill and value in just slowing down your process. I mean, it honestly, when you said you posted 8 or 9 images per year, was that right? That blew my mind. I mean, that's and is that because that's all you feel? Are you a perfectionist?
Yeah, extreme. Extreme. It can be almost frustrating because, I can spend like 40 up to 6 months editing a photo little by little, like an hour there, let it sit for a week, come back, 2 hours there, let it sit for 2 weeks, come back. And it's like little by little. And it's every time it's like, well, I sit down and then I look at it and I'm like, oh, I did that. I went too far, come back. And then, so it's a very, very lengthy process.
Do you enjoy that process?
I enjoy it maybe half of the time, maybe with a little bit of wine, Sometimes it can be frustrating because there's something there that you don't know exactly why you don't like it, and you just can't pinpoint it. And sometimes what I will do actually is just to start over. I will even delete the entire TIFF file and just start over when I'm stuck somewhere, because I'm like, well, I'm not able to pass that point. So let's just start over. So.
And when you're going on these trips, when you're doing the scouting and then when you're doing the shooting, what's your preference? Do you prefer to work with other photographers, or are you just going out on your own?
I definitely prefer to be on my own. I'm a huge introvert, so I need time alone, and also in order to be in my zone when I create, I need no distractions. And as much as I like to, go on a backcountry trip with my friends, in order to create, all my best work has been done alone. All my best work. So for me, just shooting with other photographers where, you're like kind of like close to each other and sometimes you're like shooting the same thing.
Yeah.
For me, it's not really inspiring. I think that uniqueness, either of the location or the angles or anything, is so important for me that I will always choose to go alone. And, most of my explorations are done at night. So that results in me hiking at night alone quite a bit. So I definitely have to be careful. And, there's some sort of like security problems related to that, especially when you're hiking alone in bear country.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask because,
Yeah.
Well, okay, there's a few safety issues. Sorry, my cameras, we are fixing that, but I'm still here. There are a few safety issues. Obviously, being on your own, if you come across a not nice person, if you ever get injured or something like that. I don't know if you're ever going in places where there's wild animals. Like, what do you do? What's your kind of plan B if you're like, oh, I'm in a bad situation here and I'm all alone? How do you kind of secure yourself, I guess?
Yeah. So the first thing is that I always tell at least one person where I'm going and when I'm expecting to be back. So that's the first thing that I always do. And then the second thing is I have a little device which is called Garmin InReach Mini.
Okay.
And you can contact the emergency service in case you're injured or something like that. And also with that device, what's cool is that you can connect it with your phone, and then you can, let's say, text people.
Yeah.
So let's say if I'm going for 4 days by myself on a backcountry trip, I will try to text at least two person, like, hey, I've reached a campsite, everything's good, sending you a message tomorrow. So I think that, like, letting people know where you're going and what you're doing is definitely the best. And also having that device where you can contact emergency services is really crucial. And bear spray. Of course, you need the bear spray when you're hiking in bear country.
Wow.
Because yeah, I've had a few encounters, including one when I was hiking by myself. And having that bear spray was definitely a must, let's say.
I would not. First of all, I've never seen a bear in real life. I've never seen a bear. If I saw a bear, I just think I'd run. And if it caught me, and I don't, even if I had the spray, I'd be like, just take me. I don't know what I'm doing here. I don't know how to deal with this situation. So I think it's a good insight to kind of some of the risks that photographers kind of take, really. In people see the end product and they're like, wow, that's amazing. Like, that just must be a thrill all the time, which it is thrilling, I'm sure. But then when you're kind of faced with bears and isolated situations, do you ever think, I should just stay at home and make photos of cats instead?
All the time, every single time I'm on the trail, hiking in the dark at 1 a.m. with no food in my belly, cold, tired. I'm like, why am I doing this? But it's definitely type 2 fun. So it's like, you do it, and then it's not the most fun, but you push yourself, and then you get the photos and you get some exercise in, and then you feel good about it. So definitely type 2 fun. And I think it just depends on like how much as an individual you're able to push through these, let's say, not so fun situations in order to be able to achieve what you want to achieve. Yeah.
And how did you get into photography? How did that all start?
So I started photography back in 2016.
Okay.
So at that time, I was working as a farmer, working at a banana farm in Australia.
Oh, yeah, doing some backpacking?
Yeah. Well, some backpacking. The thing is that I ended up staying almost a year and a half at that specific farm. So I worked there from 2014 all the way to 2016.
Wow.
So most people, they will just stay 3 months in order to get their second year visa, and they just keep going. And I just ended up staying there because I liked it. Even if everybody was like, why do you like being dirty every day and working with snakes and spiders and working in 35 degrees? And I don't know. I guess I'm a little bit crazy on the sides, but so basically I was just taking photos with my phone at that time. Mm-hmm. So let's say if I would go on a waterfall on the weekend, just, quick snap with my phone, and then I would share the images on my Instagram account.
Okay.
And I got a company, a bandana company, a little bit like Buff. I don't know if you know the company Buff.
I don't, unfortunately.
It's like either like bandanas that you put on your head or on your face.
Okay.
And a Australian brand contacted me, and they're like, "Hey, Cath, we checked your Instagram page. We love your photography. Would you like to take photos of our products?" And at that time, I was just shooting with my iPhone, 3 or 4. It was super old. I was like, oh, my photography. Okay. Wow. I don't think, yeah. So I think they had a budget of like $1,500, and I decided to go for it. And with that money, I bought my camera, and then I learned photography by taking photos of people wearing the product, either running, hiking, kayaking, whatever you can think of. I've shot everything. And then I basically, I learned that way, taking photos of people doing outdoors activities. And then eventually I left the work. So I ended the work at the banana farm, and I took a 3-month solo trip going through Hawaii, Indonesia, and then I ended up in the Canadian Rockies.
Wow.
And during that trip, I really got to learn even more how to use my camera, even if I'm a little bit of a slow learner. So it took me a while before leaving the automatic mode and understanding fully manual mode. And then I arrived in the Canadian Rockies, and it was my first time seeing huge mountains like this. Mm-hmm. And the feeling was absolutely insane, because I did not know that I liked mountains up until that moment. I was like, wow, these giant rocks are really making me feel something. And it's like, why? Yeah. I didn't know why. And then I started hiking a little bit more. And then I took a crazy hike with a bunch of strangers. We just ended up hiking and scrambling for like 12 hours. We discovered like little alpine lakes. We reached out a crazy viewpoint overlooking a huge glacier, going in a glacier lake, transforming into a waterfall, going into a blue lake. And I was like, this is the most insane experience and thing I've ever done in my life. And I remember taking that photo of that specific moment, and I was like, this is what I want to do. I want to capture this feeling, not necessarily the landscape, but the feeling of doing something crazy like that. And it just felt almost like otherworldly. And I remember specifically that moment that this is where I started. I decided that I would really push for photography.
I love hearing stories like that. I love, regardless of what genre you shoot, I love that moment where you just kind of step back from your camera and you're like, wow, this is awesome. Like what I'm doing right now. And I was going to ask you, because you've been to so many beautiful places, and maybe that the description you just gave me is the place, but I'll ask just in case. Can you think of kind of one moment where you've just been surrounded by pure beauty and you've just been like, this is a different world? Like where out of all your travels were you like most connected to the environment?
I think I'm going to say Peru.
Peru.
I would have said Patagonia. But the thing with Patagonia is that you can get incredible views from the little village in El Chalten. So it's like you can be in touch with the civilization and still seeing crazy mountains. But with Peru, because we did an 8-day trek in high altitude, because you had to hike and really push yourself physically and mentally in order to reach these viewpoints, I think that really helped me connect more with the landscape, because that helped me disconnect with everything else. Mm-hmm. it was crazy because we were waking up at around like 1 or 2 a.m. every single morning, hiking for like 12 hours a day and high altitude. Like if your mental is not strong,
Yeah.
good luck, because it was really, really tough. And I purposely put myself into this sort of like a schedule because I wanted to reach specific viewpoints for sunrise or for the night. And usually that trek is just done, you know, normally you just wake up at 8 a.m., whatever.
Yeah.
But for me, it was really important that we do that. And I remember a moment, I think it was on the second to last day, we went up the highest pass of the trek at night. I think it was up to 6,000 meters. And then we had to go down something like a very, very steep and slippery slope. And it was very scary. And then we reached that viewpoint overlooking like a glacier lake and then a few other glaciers and then the crazy mountains. And I was just sitting there. The guys were still in the back with the guide. So I made it like before, but I remember just being there by myself was insane. Yeah. I was like, what did I just accomplish, you know? And I think that for me, it's when I really push myself mentally and physically that I connect with the landscape the most. For me, just getting out of the car and shooting a pretty mountains, I don't connect with my work as much as when I really push myself. Is that makes sense?
No, absolutely. And so your first client was obviously the bandana company. And then things have really taken off from there. You know, I just look at your client list: Sony Alpha, the North Face, DJI. When did those kind of clients start coming in and saying, "Hey, Cath, we know you, we want to work with you"? When did that start to happen?
I'm gonna say in 2018, so about 2 years after doing photography.
Can I sorry to interject, but can I just say that that's insane, by the way? Like 2 years after first picking up a camera to start getting clients like that it's not often you hear stories like that. So that's a real credit to the work that you're creating, even after just 2 years. So sorry, but I just wanted to say that, but sorry, carry on.
No, I appreciate that. So I'm going to say that the fact that I decided to do everything in my power to travel as much as I could between 2016 and 2018 really helped me build my portfolio rapidly. And basically after I came back from Australia, went to the Canadian Rockies, I took a trip to New Zealand. And over there, I really learned how to shoot night photography. And I think that my specific style really sort of like took form a little bit more over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just basically doing the same thing that I was doing in Australia. So I was doing some housekeeping during the week at a hotel in Mount Cook National Park, which is one of the most insane national park I've ever been.
Mm-hmm.
And I would just push myself, go shoot as much as I can on the weekend and just be nonstop and really, really dedicated into building my portfolio. And I would share my photos on Instagram, and then slowly I will build my audience. And there's one point where I have a guy from Australia who messaged me and he's like, "Hey, Cath, love your photography. Like, I love your story. I love your the way you started and everything. I've been following you for a long time. I would love to do a short film
mm-hmm.
on you, or at least a little video that tells your story." So the guy flew from Australia all the way to New Zealand, and then we spent about 5 to 6 days filming a video.
Yeah.
And it turns out that this guy was working with Sony Alpha on other events. So Sony Alpha saw the video he made, and immediately they contacted me and they were like, "Hey, Cath, like, we just discovered you. We love your photography. We're looking to perhaps involve more females in our ambassador programs. Would you be interested in being an ambassador?" And then I immediately said yes. And I think that it just goes like, it's like, well, now you're a Sony ambassador. So it's sort of like easier to have opportunities when you already have this massive opportunity coming to you. And and then I work with a few different brands. I work with DJI, which was not necessarily about filming. Mm-hmm. But they were looking for a creator that was comfortable in front of the camera and also able to fly a drone. for the commercial. So that was super cool. I went to South Africa and Italy and like a few different places just to film the commercial. So it's been really, really insane. But I have to say that I definitely slowed down back in 2020,
which is
probably
fair
because of COVID, and which is fair for sure. But I think that even now it's kind of tough for companies to start, investing some money into content and working with creators. Personally, I've had a lot of trouble with that because I don't necessarily consider myself as an influencer. I'm an artist first. And then if I can have some sort of influence, is more like a byproduct of what I'm doing. I post less. I post maybe once a month on Instagram, maybe less. I don't really care about it, to be honest. All I care is about creating. So, so any commercial work has slowed down for sure. And that's where NFTs came at the perfect moment for me.
I think this is great to listen to, because a lot of people see, because you do have a strong online influence, and whether we like that word or not, it's there. And I think a lot of people misjudge photographers, artists, and they just think they're about getting as much attention as possible and and doing as little as possible. But what's clear with you, Cath, is that you have been grinding this past 5 years, whether it's, banana picking or other kind of day-to-day manual work, just so you can fund your passion, fund your trips and get out there. And I think anyone listening should take note of that what you see online, although it looks amazing, behind the scenes, there's a lot of sweat and tears and late nights and self-doubt, I'm sure. And I think it's a credit to you in terms of the work that you're putting in. Now, we've already mentioned Sony, so I'm probably going to know the answer to this question. But in terms of your first camera, moving away from the iPhone 4 or whatever it was, what was that first dedicated camera that you purchased?
Yeah, so I purchased a Sony A6000, which is a crop sensor. And I'm pretty sure I had the 35 mil f1.8 at the time. So that was my first setup. And I remember immediately thinking that it was way too zoomed in and I wanted something wider. Yeah. So funny story, because I didn't know anything about gear and I did not really understand how gear works. I bought a 1635 f4 to go on my Sony, which is a crop sensor, but the lens was not made for crop sensors. Okay. So it was all over the place. I remember I also had a Sony A7R2 back in the days and an A7S2. Mm-hmm. And I did not understand, that the S2 had, I think, 12 megapixel compared to, I can't remember how many megapixel in the R2, but way more. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of like alternating between these two setups. And I remember that guy who filmed me and he was like, Cath, why don't you just force yourself to take photos with the one that has a larger sensor? You're your photos are going to be higher resolution. I was like, I didn't know that. So that's how, for me, I am not good with technology, and I truly don't care about learning about technology as long as it produces something cool. Yeah. But then, becoming a workshop leader, I had to learn technology. So definitely I like the end result more, and everything that is in between about the learning a new camera, learning whatever new. I don't like that. I like just to get to know a setup and then just, be comfortable with it. And I have bought Sony A1 this year, and I sold it. I sold it because I like my Sony A7R3 more. I know, but I'm more used to my A7R3. You develop a workflow, and then it was just, I don't know, I was not really feeling it. So I've been with Sony since day one, and then just exploring different cameras that they have.
It's a good point you make, because I think the Sony A1 spec wise is amazing. I think it's like 50 megapixel sensor. You know, it really is a fantastic camera. And sometimes as photographers or hobbyists, whatever, we're like, ooh, I want that. But there's actually value, even if the specs don't match, you know, the latest cameras or whatever, there's actually value in kind of the relationship that you have with the camera. Do you know what it feels like in your hand, what it means to you, what experience,
100%.
You know, I've got a Fujifilm X-T2 and we're on the X-T4 now, and I can't let it go. You know, I should let it go. It's kind of getting to that stage, but I'm just like, we have traveled the world together. You know, I know that sounds weird because it's not a human, but sometimes I think I wish I could talk to my camera and just be like, so out of all these countries that we visited, like, where did you like the most? But, you know, I'd get locked up if I if I started talking to my camera. But it's interesting because you do workshops, or you did workshops, you know, before the pandemic, and you've also said that you're a massive introvert. So what's that like?
It's a great question. The thing is that I love to share my passion. So it's definitely two conflicted ideas of being a huge introvert and needing a lot of alone time and then running a workshop. Mm-hmm. So usually when I want to run a workshop, I'm on adrenaline 24/7 from start to finish. And then after that, I don't want to see anyone or talk to anyone for like 1 month. Okay. So that's usually the way that I feel. So let's say if I want to run a workshop, I make sure that I have a bunch of alone time before. Then I run the workshop. I'm with people. I share my passion. The adrenaline kicks in. I'm like high energy. So I'm very, very high the entire time. And then I sort of like crash it when the workshop ends. And that's usually when I will, let's say in Iceland, I will run a workshop and then stay an extra 2 to 3 weeks after just for some personal shooting and not meeting up or traveling with anyone and just making sure that I'm alone like most of the time in order to be able to create. But it's a really good question. And I remember back in 2019, I was just running workshops back to back to back to back. It was absolutely insane. And there was a moment where I could see that my mental health was suffering a little bit. And I was like, well, maybe the year after I'll just like cut down maybe half of the workshops just so I have time to recharge. Mm-hmm. But then the pandemic happened. So I didn't have to take this decision. But for sure for the future, you know, I think I will probably run less of the workshops just so I have enough time to first create myself, because during my workshops it's pretty rare that I shoot. Mm-hmm. I'm usually really focused on helping other people to get their own images, and then also, you know, make sure that I have time to create.
So with your whole kind of career, with the workshops, the traveling, the intense kind of process of making your images, both kind of the physical aspect and then kind of, you know, the editing and stuff like that. You just touched on mental health. Like, do you find that this kind of lifestyle that you live does put a lot of pressure on your mental health? And what helps you recognize when you're struggling, and what do you do to kind of make sure that you take care of yourself mentally?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that pressure can happen at any time. You know, even with NFTs, I feel that I was sort of like in the same schedule as when I was running workshops back to back in 2019. It's just never nonstop. And the thing is that I have a very, I'm going to say obsessive personality, where when I start something or when I get involved into something, I just can't stop. And I don't like to take breaks. Like I don't really take time for myself. So I need to force myself to, you know, add in my schedule. Okay, like this week, I'm not doing anything. I can watch Netflix as much as I can. And it's okay if I'm either not shooting, editing, working, whatever. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what I did in the last week, because I've been literally working nonstop 24/7 since February. And I was like, I haven't had a single moment off social media. And I have definitely sacrificed a lot of hiking this summer to really focus on NFTs. So I sort of like, add this to my schedule that, okay, now it's time to relax, and it's okay to relax.
Yeah.
But it's definitely hard to relax when you're so passionate about what you're doing. You know what I mean? It's like, you can't just turn this off and you're like, well, okay, I want to go shoot now, or I want to edit something. And it's like, well, maybe it is like very important to completely disconnect from anything that, drives you, because otherwise you never stop. And that's how you get burnt out. So for me, taking care of me is usually to go out hiking, but without my camera gear. I want to make sure that there's no pressure to take photos. And even if I'm missing a good opportunity, I don't care. I just want to go out, get some fresh air, get my body moving, and then just sit there and enjoy the view without any pressure. So that's the best thing that I do for myself.
And is there kind of, okay, I'm just gonna, we had a little bit of a technical issue there, so we are back and all is well. What I was asking, Cath, was in terms of photography, in terms of kind of unwinding and just disconnecting from your usual type of work, is there anything you like to do just for the fun of it? No pressure, no kind of long hikes at 1 a.m., just make photos for the fun of it. Is this something that you like to do?
I honestly, other than long hikes without a camera, the only thing I like to do is to watch Netflix. And I know it sounds sad, but that's just, I'm a simple person. I have a very few interests. So anything that sort of like relaxes me, maybe going to the gym. I love to go to the gym, but once again, okay, maybe someone would consider that going to the gym is not really relaxing, but I guess as I'm talking to you, I'm realizing that, I just like to do something or keep my body moving. And for me, it's sort of like a meditation. There's something that happens when I do these long hikes with or without my camera. I disconnect a lot, and it really quiets the mind. And I think that's something that I really need in my life. So either, watching a silly TV show on Netflix or doing these sort of like long hikes just really helps me not think about anything else outside of work.
Yeah. What do you like to watch on Netflix?
I like horror movies.
Okay.
So, once again, maybe not the most relaxing thing, but
I feel like we're learning here, Cath, that you like to, any way, shape or form, torture yourself. Like, whether it's torturing yourself with photography, with Netflix, with the gym.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. And like my favorite thing is to watch scary movies alone in the basement, all, no lights. So I fully focus on the movie.
Wow, alone in the basement watching horror movies. Like,
it's the best. It's the best.
So just one final quick question. What's kind of the plan in the next 6 to 12 months, if you have one, in terms of photography? What do you want to keep focusing on or start focusing on? So
I will definitely keep doing NFTs, but I really want to do 50-50 NFTs and maybe photography workshops mixed with personal trips. But for 2022, 100%, I want to focus on keep building my portfolio, because I really haven't been shooting a lot in the last year and a half.
Okay.
So I have a few trips planned in Patagonia, Peru, just like really crazy expeditions in remote places. So that's really my main goal. But I will definitely keep pushing for NFTs. I have one workshop in Iceland coming up in October, and then I have another workshop coming up in June 2022 in Peru. But other than that, I'm not even sure if I'm going to release anything else, because I just really want to take that time for myself. So
that's amazing.
Yes.
Well, what I'll do is on the website and the socials, I'll put links to your website and everything like that. I'm not going to tell you to or ask you to tell everybody where to find you, because people have brains that are not sponges, so they'll just forget. So I'll put links in the bottom, and then you can go see Cath's work. And I recommend that you do that, because it's honestly, it really is beautiful. It's when I first saw it, I was like, I hope she speaks to me. So I'm very grateful for you taking time out of your day, especially when you're an introvert, because I know, conversations, not all, sometimes you might be like, I don't want to talk to another human being today. So I feel privileged that I got some of your time, and thank you for that.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and that was a lot of fun.
Not a problem. You take care. Well, thanks once again for Cath Simard for speaking with me on this week's episode of Inside the Photographer's Mind. If you want to see more of her work, then check out the links below in the description. You can reach her via her website, her Instagram, her Twitter. She doesn't post often, but when she does, it's well worth your time. Guys, we'll be back again next week with another episode. If you want to keep up to date with what's happening with the Phoblographers Inside the Photographer's Mind, then be sure to subscribe, share it, hit a like, let everybody know about it, so we can keep bringing you the best interviews in the photography space. Until next week, guys, enjoy yourselves. Thanks for listening. See ya.